Hi, I'm Carrie Dara with Cedar Valley. And this morning we're going to visit with Danny Laudick, who is here to talk about Cedar Valley Strong and Red Cedar. And Danny and I go way back. He was a former employee at Cedar Valley, formerly the Alliance and Chamber, and did some really good things for us, getting us started with Live the Valley and many other innovations that we work together on. And we'll continue to do that for many, many years, I'm sure, Danny. So let's start first, though, with Cedar Valley Strong initiative that you co-founded with Heath, and share a little bit about what that is and then what it led into, if you would.
Yeah, so Cedar Valley Strong, so to give credit, Heath Wilkin, he's the owner of Cedar Falls Laser Engraving, small business in Cedar Falls. He, when all the COVID stuff started, had just created a webpage on his website that just listed some of the businesses he knew that were starting to sell online, starting to do delivery, in response to everything. And then I had been looking at what are some things we can do through Red Cedar with our resources and our capacity to help support businesses during all the COVID stuff. Because a lot of our work is kind of built toward small, early stage startups, and which are almost always small businesses. So I saw Heath just had this on his website, reached out to him, said, hey, would love to help if I can. So we got together, we talked about it when we were still allowed to get together, before we were told that we're no longer allowed to see each other in person.
Right.
And so the whole goal was just realizing a lot of businesses were starting to sell online, we're starting to do carry out delivery, but a lot of people, it's hard to keep up on Facebook with every single individual business who's doing stuff. So really quickly overnight, we just made a website called cedarvalleystrong.com. We created an application form for businesses to just submit that, okay, here's my business, here's how to contact us, and we'll be doing online sales, takeout, delivery, or if their store was still physically open before they closed everything. It was just a website that listed everything, and we ended up getting, in the span of probably a month and a half, over 300 local businesses, a lot of them small independent retailers, Main Street type businesses, a few service companies who were still going. And so a lot of it was the listing as just a value added service to give people a place where they could see just an update, but then also it was kind of the excitement of giving people that call to action to realize, like, yes, our businesses are going to go through a tough time, but it's a chance to kind of reach out, patron a lot of your favorites, order online, order takeout, just keep up with what they're doing. So we started posting content related to, here's 10 ways to support business when you can't buy. Leave them a review, share their content, some of those different things. And then it kind of expanded on seeing some of what other communities were doing to support. There was a tip jar for servers and bartenders. And there was someone, it was in another state, had developed just a quick walkthrough of how you could do this, and you could copy their Google Docs and everything. And so we just quickly launched one on the website, got close, I think just over 100 local bartenders and servers listed their thing up there, and it was just a list of their Vimeos and their PayPals that people could go to still tip the server or bartender they can't still see. And then there was a few things. We partnered with a few local companies that donated about $4,000 to put together Cedar Valley Strong booster boxes. Were just these actual physical boxes that had about $75 worth of local goods that we were able to purchase through the donations and then use as raffle prizes to encourage people to keep buying local. So we gave out close to 50 of those boxes. So really it was just this whole push to figure out, okay, in all this, how do we keep people excited and going to keep patroning their local small businesses?
Right. So, obviously it took off quickly, and it was just exactly what was needed at the time to get people, help them recognize the energy that they still had and the effectiveness that they still had. So, and you described a little bit about what else has been going on since then, but are you still keeping in touch with these folks, and what kind of information or resources are they needing? Are they asking for, or are you providing?
Yeah, so we took a little bit of a slowdown just because it kind of got to that point where everyone was burnt out just from all the excitement and all the emotional stuff that goes into just being on edge for a couple of months. So we got the booster boxes done. We raised about $6,000, $7,000 in matching dollars through crowdfunding to sell discounted gift certificates. So we sold almost $15,000 worth of gift certificates to local businesses in just a few weeks. And so then the next step we're really looking at is, especially as all this stuff drags on, is what's that? It's hard to keep everyone excited, but there are other ways you can still keep people engaged. Is it doing more booster boxes? Just having that listing of businesses It's been really good because there's a lot of those small independent businesses who aren't really plugged in to the traditional networking that you either just heard about through word of mouth or something like that. So we're really looking at how do we shine a light on some of those really small and independent businesses who are most at risk when something like this happens.
Right. Well, we've talked about that too. I mean, I'm sure, and I'd like you to share um, some of the creative innovations that folks have been, that you noticed that folks came up with, whether it's traditional or non-traditional, or how they did a hybrid version of what their business is.
Yeah.
What did you come across?
It has been really interesting. One, just on what people have been doing, but two, how fast they did it.
Right.
Like just to see how quickly businesses were able to shift around to delivering drinks remotely, or not remotely, but delivering them takeout. You can't do virtual someday, maybe.
Yeah.
But being able to do that, we've seen a lot of people that didn't previously have any e-commerce setups starting to do it. We had the business that reached out to us about the Cedar Valley Strong brand and asked if they could sell, it was one of the popcorn shops, if they could sell buckets of their popcorn, but also buying stuff from other local small businesses and selling them as a package. And they were getting a bunch of people ordering those.
You know, the irony, sorry, I
that?
didn't mean to interrupt, but the irony to this is that, so you and I have been talking for the last 18 months or more about how can we help get a resource of understanding and being comfortable and confident with e-commerce to a lot of our small businesses long before the pandemic. I mean, we knew that that was going to be a necessary outlet at some point. So the sooner we can help people become comfortable with that, the better. And then they ended up having to jump in the deep end, like you said, in a hurry. I mean, pivot with a capital P, and they had to really figure it out. And so, again, I think that's so ironic because we knew that that was a resource that was going to be needed and necessary. But we were just slow to getting in front of folks when they probably could have used it most. But it sounds like that's what you were doing, which is awesome.
Yeah, the e-commerce piece especially, it's not as simple as just throwing up a website and all of a sudden people are buying online. It's figuring out how do you do fulfillment, how do you do supply management, how do you take orders for stuff that you're going to have to make on demand and you don't know how much people are going to order. I know there's a lot of businesses who on the upside have actually been able to improve their profit margins through all of this because it gave them a chance to realize that by selling more at the stores, selling more through e-commerce, which has lower overhead, they've been able to keep about the same profit margins. They had to shift drastically to really focusing more on how can they work with the local retailers, Hy-Vee, to get their products in there.
Right.
Like T-Seller next door, they did a lot more sales through some of those places in e-commerce than they had before. And even seeing a lot of restaurants who have been able to realize, okay, we can't have a bunch of people in the place, but we can do, more package deals like a 4-course meal or something that's a smaller, more intimate experience, but has a higher value add and a little more margin with it.
So what's interesting is that, so you come from Red Cedar. I mean, that's your day job, so to speak, and Red Cedar, a nonprofit dealing with innovation, and we'll have you share more about that. But so while you and Heath quickly addressed a need that needed to be met, it really did end up dovetailing in nicely with what Red Cedar is all about. So why don't you visit a little bit about Red Cedar's mission and the goals?
So Red Cedar, we really started as realizing the whole process of starting any new product, any new business is just complicated. It's one of those things. Most people don't do it multiple times. You typically do it once. And it's a lot to learn. It's a lot to take on. You end up having to learn just about 20 different things that you would go to school for. So we wanted to figure out, a few of us when we started it, we realized a lot of people were building things, starting things in their, the traditional in your basement type thing. But most people on average work on a new idea for 2 to 3 years before it ever becomes their livelihood, before they actually launch it into something. What we found is a lot of startups that we were talking to and asking, what did you struggle with most? What were the biggest things that were barriers? A lot of them was isolation. It was just not really having a network of other people they could build and learn from. There's a lot of resources out there for people that want to start something, but it's really hard to know, if you've never done it, who do I contact? Where do I get a hold of? Who should I go to? Where do I get plugged in? So Red Cedar, really the founding idea was just how do we help take that whole network of resources from mentors, advisors, investors, institutions who are there to support with programs, training, but then give people kind of a peer network and the ability to plug in and figure out, we've always used the terms like beacon and wayfinding, but how do we give people a beacon so that they can kind of see, here's where you can go to start, but then help people wayfind through all the resources, where to go talk to. Some of our entry level events like 1 Million Cups are kind of built for someone who's just starting to get a first chance to be in front of people,
Right.
to practice their pitch, to put it in front of people, to actually have to go through the work of putting all these ideas you have into a 6-minute presentation, which is harder than you would think. But then also we realized, access to investors and early angel investors, that's one of those things that you just hopefully know the right person who knows the right person who says, yeah, I know someone. But a lot of times that can take months, years, you don't get connected to the right people. So we realize, okay, if we can bring some of these people together, go out in the community, find people who are starting new things and make those connections for them, how can we help people learn faster and accelerate their growth? And hopefully, really the big goal is, how do you reduce the risk for somebody when they want to start something?
Mm-hmm.
There's always this perception that starting something new is really risky, which it can be if you don't do the work right.
Right.
But a lot of times there is a process to how you can validate if there's a real market for what you're doing. You can test ideas, you can learn things without putting all the money in up front. So we wanted to really help figure out, how do we make sure as a community 10 years from now, we're better at helping people launch and start new things than we were 10 years ago. And how do we do that repeatedly?
Yeah, sorry. So Red Cedar's been around, 3-4 years? And my question would be, so I know you've been tracking and measuring outcomes. Can you share any of some of the data from doing this for the many years that you have?
Yeah, the startup rates, and that is hard to measure just because there's so many people. There's always more people working on stuff than those who are actually in the programs. But we have seen with the fund, we've got a few investments we've made, and we're starting to see a lot more people who are actually looking at growing scalable opportunities and tapping into bigger markets. Because there's a lot of times we talk about the difference between a Main Street company and a scalable or a tech-enabled company. It's the same process, but really it depends who are your customers, where are they at. If it's a Main Street business that is wanting to, open up a bookstore, there's already been bookstore business models created. You can look at how to do those. You have to define, is there a market for this? Do people want it? If you're building a new technology product that doesn't really have an established business model, it's trying to figure out, okay, what is the business model? How do we make money? Who are our customers? So in terms of the actual statistics, it's really hard to track that high level stuff just because when you talk about startups, it's really hard to define at what point are you actually a startup. Because a lot of people just start as doing small independent things at their home. They could be selling through e-commerce, but they're never really tracked entity doing business. We have seen a lot more investment capital, and that side of it that's coming into some of the startups in the area. And we've been tapping into a lot more of the state level. There's a lot of funds available through the IDA. I know one of the UNI companies, Takai, just got $25,000 from there for one of their initial programs. So it's been kind of interesting to see just how many people are working from home, working on an idea. One of the companies we recently worked with, still are working with, she helped start another company, and she had this little thing she was doing on the side. It's a fundraising platform for a lot of sports teams, typically high school sports teams, the non-traditional, non-big ones, so not basketball, football, things like volleyball, tennis, where they have to fundraise to help support the cost of their own program. It helps automate all of the paperwork. They don't have to hold the money. There's a lot of issues with coaches having to hold all the funds.
Right.
And then issues about accountability with that.
Interesting.
So this was she's a volleyball coach. She built it to help with her fundraising for her team. She knows the technology side. And then all of a sudden realized, there's other teams who need this. And just through her network of friends, she was having other sports teams reach out wanting to pay to use her software. So she started selling it. And then all of a sudden it got to a point where, okay, this is more than a hobby. Actually needs either. She has her own company she's helping run already. So we were able to connect her with some funding to helpfully hire a business partner that can help them build the company. So it's a lot of those really great connections. But even through a lot of the COVID stuff, statistically, when there's an economic downturn, entrepreneurship and startup rates increase because it gives people a lot of, initiative and push to go do something that they've been thinking about doing for a while. Even as an example, here at Millrace Co-working, we've had, I think, 3 new startup businesses start here working in the last month. From consulting to, we've had actually a few people that moved to the area that were working on things that started as members here, one in like data security. And
Right.
so that's why it's been especially interesting to see with all the COVID stuff. A lot of times people see that type of thing as a negative for the economy, but a lot of times it actually brings to light a lot of the new opportunities and things that could be done better, that kind of just like Zoom as an example, these types of meetings and interviews.
Right.
They weren't really as prevalent before, but it's given us a chance to actually reflect on. So for some of our programs, we would typically always meet in person, which, you don't get a group of people together for less than an hour.
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense to ask people to drive somewhere, get together if you're going to meet for 15 minutes. But we had never really thought about just the idea of, okay, for some of these groups of companies we're working with, should we just get them together for a quick stand-up meeting in the morning for 15 minutes just to help them stay accountable, keep on track? And now with all this, all of a sudden we're like, well, why do we get together in person? Let's just jump on a Zoom call for 15 minutes and check in with everyone.
Right. Yeah. We're finding the efficiency for virtual connections just across the board. I mean, it's every industry, every business. So those are the opportunities that come from a downturn, like you said. So people have said before, so what's Grow Cedar Valley's interest or role in this? And we're not an owner at all in any way, shape, or form with Red Cedar, but we're a partner because we firmly believe that what Danny's doing and what's going on with this innovation is a feeder to what we do. So once those businesses are up and running and get through some of the, that valley of death and everything, and they get to the point where their business plan is being executed, then that's where Grow Cedar Valley can really be helpful and a partner and a collaborator. So we really see what's going on at Red Cedar as a real good first step, like pre-first step to what it is that goes on at Grow Cedar Valley. So we really appreciate your partnership.
And it's been nice to have an excuse to just keep working with you all the time.
That too.
So yeah, it is. I think a lot of times, the landscape around starting a new company or launching a new product or service, it's amazing how, the old term of it takes a community or it takes a village, excuse me. Like that phrase, when you look at all the things that go into affecting rates of startups, how successful they are, I mean, you get everything into like government policies, existing industry base on what type of technologies and supply chains do you have in your area that a new startup can tap into and take advantage of. I know we've always talked manufacturing industry, and the base of that here is huge.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of more opportunities. If someone wants to launch a new physical product, we have a lot of the capacities and things that people can use to start here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even those peer groups, I think a lot of times people, always think, oh, we live in Iowa, there's not a lot of connections here, and I have to go somewhere else to build my company. It's been so enlightening to see over the last just couple of years of doing this work. We, within, the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, did I get that right?
Something like
Whatever it is. That is absolutely true. And it's probably more like 3 degrees. Because it seems like if you really want to get connected, there's people here that have connections across the globe in the industries they're in. It's just a lot of times we don't have the density of networks here that they have in a bigger city. So you have to be a little more intentional about how you connect to those. But I think one of the nice things about living around here, especially in the Midwest, is everyone has a very genuine desire to want to help. It's just sometimes making that first introduction can be a little harder, but it's really fast to be able to connect into some of the networks and people here that have those. And, if you prove that you're willing to do the work, you typically can get a lot of good connections pretty fast around here.
Well, and it's not lost on anybody that as people get through recovery, whether it's now or after maybe another upturn in the virus, looking at places like Iowa and the Midwest as far as, getting a more sane pace of life, and the social distancing is actually what we've always done. That's just the way we operate. So there's a relatively safe, very safe environment to grow your business and grow your family and grow your life. So
one of the things we talk a lot with new startups about is their burn rate. And typically, a lot of times we've had companies who went out to bigger events in San Francisco or New York. And a lot of times companies out there, when they get to talking about, how much investment did you get to this point? companies around here have been able to build and get to a point much further along than other places for so much less money, because the cost of living here, the cost of talent, workforce, people are able to grow much faster for far less money because the overhead that you have to have here is far smaller. And we've had actually a few people, one specifically that just moved back here, started working in Miller Race, that they moved back here just because, well, they had moved out to New York right as COVID hit, and because they wanted to experience New York, and then that turned into experiencing a
Pandemic.
$3,500 a month studio apartment.
Oh, that too.
And so they moved back here for family, and just realized you can. So it's sometimes weird and hard to kind of articulate to people the business value of having that lower overhead, because it does mean you have a much longer runway to be able to launch something new with a lot less having to take on less budget. Because once you start to take on investment and resources, you kind of get put down a track of, there's a lot more strings attached to some of that expectations. So you can build something really flexibly here, especially if you know how to tap into those networks.
Right.
Those
Which is
people
what
that
you're there,
can.
and that's what you're available for. So
Yep.
we need to wind down a little bit here, but for the folks that are visiting with us today, how to get a hold of you? I mean, if there's an idea brewing, and like you said, these are the times that people are getting creative. How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, and I would say the easiest way is if you go on our website, my email and phone number are on there, or if they want to just give me a call directly.
And what's the website again?
And it's Red Cedar, CV, as in cedarvalley.com.
Got it.
And then typically that was one of the things we have been very intentional about, is if someone has a new idea, we always make time to go grab coffee. Well, it doesn't really work right now, but jump in a Zoom meeting or do something, just because there's so much context to what somebody's working on, what connections they need. I wish it was as easy as you tell us you're at point A, we connect you to point B.
Right.
But it's usually more of just figuring out where you're at with the business as a person. Are you ready to commit to it? What resources do you need?
Well,
reach out to me. And
point A and point B look different for everybody. I mean, what point A is looks entirely different than what point A is for someone else. So the points look different. So getting the context of where people are coming from and where they want to go, and that's really, really important. So, hey, I know we're going to keep talking. I mean, we're going to do this often, and we always have lots to share and talk about. So thank you for carving out some time this morning with our Grow Cedar Valley audience. And like I said, I know we'll do it again. So hang in there. You're doing good work.
Thanks
We really appreciate it. Thanks, Danny.
And you guys do it for everything you've done.
You bet. Take care.
You too, Karen. See you later.